Man like Mark Sullivan, the warrior self. Stay tuned for the thrilling episode. Woo!
A positive mental attitude can clear away all obstacles which stand between you and your major purpose in life.
This is the Snowboard Project featuring Mark Sullivan and the Bead. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.
Welcome to the Snowboard Project. I'm Mark Sullivan.
And I am the Beeve, and we are here in Ketchum, Idaho at the Snowboard Project Studios. Don't you want to say the hot water in somewhere? You know, I felt like I didn't need to, but you just interjected.
Let's move on.
Yeah, okay.
Keep going.
We are at the hot water inn.
What? Okay. Keep going. Just keep going.
We are bringing you episode 16 with, who do we have today?
Okay, so today we have I think this is a pretty interesting character. His name is Aaron Draplin. And do you know Aaron Draplin?
I've heard the name Aaron Draplin, obviously, just being around the snowboard industry and just knowing, I know he's a graphic designer. I know that he's done a lot of board graphics that I know about, and probably a ton that I don't know about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, he kind of rose to the top of the world of snowboarding as far as graphic design is concerned, and now he's actually considered one of the best graphic designers in the world, potentially.
Let's just back it up a little bit, because you discovered Draplin when he was in college, right?
I don't know how much. I mean, okay, so I had a guy in my media militia that was a column at Snowboarder from the Midwest. I was basically, when I took over as editor-in-chief of Snowboarder, I needed to hire a new art director, and I knew that just any old art director wouldn't do. I wanted to have someone who would have a very high standard. And so, I mean, I took months. It was the hardest job to fill at the magazine at that time. But eventually, I got referred to Aaron Draplin, who was still in school, by our Midwest media militia guy. I believe it was Eric Campbell was his name. And so I went back and forth with Aaron, and I ended up hiring him despite what other people thought about a guy coming straight out of design school, being able to handle that kind of workload.
What was it about Aaron's design style that you saw that you said, like, hey, this is what we need at Snowboarder? There had to have been so many qualified people out there, but, you know, a guy in college?
You know, I guess I saw that he was just like self-motivated in a different way than most people. I mean, he was already doing all these little Draplin Design Company things, and he was just constantly churning out design, whether it was for a client or for himself, or he was just always designing. And so I saw that fire in him to just want to do design, and then want to do great design.
Gotcha. So should we just roll into this interview, because we're going to cover a lot of this anyway, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, let's check this out. Aaron Draplin, number 16.
That's the phone.
Okay. We're rolling, Draplin.
Right. So here you want to do the you're going to do your big where the guys talk about this. See, that's what I'm saying. I fucking, these guys, everyone thinks they're goddamn Edward R. Murrow or Ira Glass.
No. So today I'm joined by Aaron James Draplin. Draplin
that was right.
Industries.
That was right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Draplin Design Company.
Draplin
LLC.
Design Company. Where can people find you?
If I can get a word in here, Draplin.com, of course. I've had that thing since 1990. Cameron got me going on that fucker. 1996. Now, funny little story about that. A couple years back, I have a cousin who's a bit of an entrepreneur, and he called and said, you've had Draplin.com for a long time, and I'd like to have it for a couple years. And I said, you'll die before you get this, just so you know. You'll die. In fact, I already own your name, too. Whatever it was. Some cousin was calling me. No. So you can go to @Draplin at Instagram.
What's your cousin's name if they want to go to his website that you own?
It rhymes with Rustin. He's I think he's a bit of a Republican, so I don't need to get into some of that shit, but he's a nice, sweet guy, whatever. But Detroit guy. But at Draplin, Instagram, @Draplin, Twitter, Draplin.com. But, you can come find me in Portland. That's probably the funnest way. But all right. So what are we doing here? What's the name of your podcast?
It's called The Snowboard Project.
Right,
Pretty straightforward. Just trying to do something that doesn't confuse anyone, kind of like Snowboard Mag. I was going to call it Snowboard Mag 2.0, but I figured I'd just call it The Snowboard Project, give it a new name.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and so the idea is basically that people can learn from people of experience. And for some reason, there's all these people from the world of snowboarding that have gone on to pretty amazing things, and you happen to be one of those guys. So I wanted to sit down and talk to you. But let's talk about snowboarding first, and then we'll get into the other stuff. Yeah. Tell me about how you learned how to snowboard. You're from Traverse City, Michigan, upstate Michigan.
Yeah, northern Michigan. Well, I mean, we're skateboarders. Where all the way goes back to is I grew up in northern Michigan, where there, my mom and dad were skiers, and it was this premium thing. You got to go through with your school, and you got to go, and it was always this treat. It was fun, but we couldn't afford it. It was expensive. It was like, it was kind of for like rich kids and shit. But I got the bug, being up on the hill, being with your buddies, etc. I wasn't into organized sports. So I turned my back on that shit in high school and got away from all those jocks and shit. And luckily the skateboard, and that culture, a skateboard, it fucking rescued me. Right. So not only did that skateboard bring me buddies and a culture, but it taught me about thinking about myself, independence, making your own art, all the bands, all the t-shirts, all the haircuts, friends with drug problems.
It was more than just like a stick and ball sport where you sat down on Sunday and watched the game with your
25
dad.
years later, we won. We listened to better bands. We were creative. The girls we hung out with were cooler. You know what I mean? It's like, so those kids ran the roost in 9th and 10th and 11th grade. Fuckheads. They're as normal as anyone else these days. A bunch of goddamn Trump supporters at that. But what I'm getting at is I picked the right path for me. And I'm so thankful because that, you skateboard all summer long in Michigan and it snows in the winter and then you become a snowboarder in the winter. So we were snowboarders. And, I learned on a Coleco banana board how just to get down the hill. It's somewhere. It was upstairs. You saw it, right? Yeah. I mean, that is, I could go off 2 and 3 foot jumps and just sort of acid drop, right? And then go straight down the hill. A year later, mom and dad, for Christmas, I got a 140 Elite Burton used for $100. And I remember my dad wouldn't let me use it until Christmas Day, and then it snowed and he let me go fuck around. And I learned methods that day. I learned methods on a
First day.
I mean, you just can go down the hill. Now, that's before I could even carve. I remember when we went to Crystal Mountain, about 45 minutes away in Thompsonville, Michigan, with a couple buddies. And I was wearing cargo pants, like some cargo, like camouflage fatigues with long johns, and those froze because you're sitting on your ass. And that was the day I learned to carve, scratching down on the ice all the way down. So, in no time, you're looking at the mags and you start dreaming of going west. The first wave went out west. They went to Breckenridge. So all those pioneers for us, guys that were 4 and 5 and 6 years older, that was the model, and they went and did it. And then they would come back and regale tales of, powder and girls and jumps and footage. And then we had like Matt Hale was like the one guy in town that actually had some shit going, and he was coming back showing stuff. So we got the bug there and we knew we were going to go west. So out of high school, 17, I was ready to go, but I did 2 years of community college. And then I had mom and dad's blessing. So at 19, that's when I moved to Oregon with all my asshole buddies, 6 of us, to be snowboarders.
How'd you pick Bend, Oregon versus like Colorado, Tahoe, all the other places?
At the time, and you guys know how all this shit shifts. At the time, Breck was the place. When we went out there in the spring of '93, Tarquin Robbins, we saw him go by. He was the one. All those guys, like I'm buddies with Rayberg now, right? Yeah. And every time I see him, I go, you were hot shit when I was going out west. You were hot shit, and now I know you're just a fucker from 1991 like me, and we just kind of hug it out. He is the sweetest guy.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't tell him this, but I had Rayberg on my wall because he was a Wisconsin guy that went and did it. So those guys are running the show somewhere out west. It's our turn to go in 93. But I had a buddy, Derek DeNoyer, who had a little bit of a sponsorship with Morrow. And that meant he came to Oregon to get closer to that, to Bend. Mm-hmm. And, of course, a little bit of Salem. And that was enough for my buddies, Bry Elshire, myself, and Derek. The three of us got to Oregon. The idea was this: we wanted to kind of leapfrog Colorado. When you went out there, all it took for me was like being threatened by TJ Lise. And let's just for the record say, hey, TJ, if you listen to this, go fuck yourself in 1993. And if you want to come to Portland 2018, I'll slap you in the face. But see, because that guy got in my face on some mini ramp, and I was like, he doesn't even know me. What's his problem? That's what he does to everybody. So, this was like, fuck if I'm going to be around that, here in, Breckenridge or whatever. Fuck these guys. They're just a bunch of hood rats from the Midwest or wherever the hell anyway. So fuck this. We kept going where we didn't know anyone. It wasn't cool. It was about deep powder, and it was about the Northwest and hiding and learning Bachelor. And it wasn't the cool place. It wasn't big, champagne powder and shit. No, it was like mellow slopes, but you got the right day in Cow's Face, and you saw Dave Sipnewski go fucking 30 feet in the air. That's when we were like, we're in the West. Holy shit.
So were you like at this time aspiring to be like a sponsored athlete?
Not at all.
Not at all. Just
Mark,
have fun.
I don't know if you can see this through the radio, but I happen to be a little rotund. I happen to tip the scales towards the husky side of things. And, in 1993,
so that was never your ambition.
In 1993, I was 200 pounds, and I could hit jumps, but not as good as my buddy Derek Denard. Derek had all the tricks, and none of us were as good as Marcus Agee, who was bionic, or my favorite snowboarder from my whole time in Bend, Josh Dirksen, my favorite, the sweetest guy, good human being, and the best style. And you know what? I'd like ride the lift with him. Who are your heroes in your small community? Yeah. And then who are your heroes that you see in the mags? And what happens when you start to see your heroes from the small community become in a magazine? And they stay the same? Josh Dirksen, And it's like, okay, I knew clearly that's just not in the cards. Like that hustle, the talent. Here's the deal. I hit jumps like anybody else. And there was a jump called Moto at
Bachelor.
There was a jump at I'm thinking about it. Wow, I miss it. There was a jump called Moto at Bachelor. And if you hit it just right on a good day, you were up 7-8 feet up over the little berm. You kind of cleared a second little berm. And that was the fucking West. And we did this stuff. And then you go up on Cow's Face and hit some big wind lip, and you're up there. Now, I was kind of known as a bit of an excavator, for bombing out some landings here and there. But I fucking went for it. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, there were enough moments where, and I hold them very close, we were shitbags from the Midwest. We come out West, and I hit some big jumps and landed and rode away. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it might just be a big floaty, Indy or whatever the fuck. But that's what, that's what the heroes at Bachelor were doing, and we emulated that. And more importantly, we became part of that community, and we were known on the Hill as just fun guys to ride with. My buddy Chad Smith, Johnny White, rest in peace, John White. All of us that went out there. My buddy Eric Campbell was out there for one season. At one point there were like 8 of us, all of us out there, and it was just, it was our high school from back home. But no one knew where we were, and it was just cool to kind of hide. The best part of those winters, we were coming to Portland a whole bunch. I know it sounds weird, but see, where I'm from, Detroit, there's a good chance your car will get ripped off. And that's not really something funny. It was the reality. We went and saw the Jesus Lizard one time, and my buddy's car got ripped off that night. Like the records we bought that afternoon, we went to the record store, they were stolen with the car. He gets his car back, but I don't get my $200 for the records. This is 1992 or something, 93. And that's what we grew up around. So when we get to Portland on weekends and we're seeing bands every other weekend and then riding Meadows on the way back, it was heaven. It was affordable. You could park. It was mellow. My buddies who were weed smokers, they could get good weed. Me, I don't know. I could park my shitty little Skyhawk. It wasn't this thing that your car would get taken up here, So yeah. I was hooked on Oregon pretty fast.
Okay. So channel, if you will, let's say the best day of riding Bachelor that you had out of those 3 years or however long you were there. What was the best day out of those?
Well,
tell me a story about that.
I will tell. Oh, man. You're going to meet my buddy Robbie, who's my contractor here. But more than that, he's a brother, from back in the day. In the book, there's a couple shots from the bend section. And Robbie's dropping a 40-foot, wind lip at Baker. I went first, and I'll never forget it. I rolled the windows down it was 35, 40 feet. It was big. It's that one as you hike up to that Shucks and Arm or whatever.
Yeah.
We're not going to go like Tex or some shit, one of those characters. We heard of them there, but we hiked up to that little guy. That afternoon we went, I don't know what fucking notch we went to, but that was the day that we met Craig Kelly. He was up there on his like split board or whatever you call those things. And I was on a 151 solid only because it was my graphic. Anywho, the best day that we had in the West wasn't even at Bachelor. It was up at Baker on a spring day, and we were up there with all the solid guys. So you're with Matt Hale and Jeff Wastel and Kurt Wastel and Dave Tuck and, buddies from Colorado. And these are pros. They're in magazines, but they're all cool as shit too, And then Chad and Robbie and Derek and I all went, and hiked this thing. There's a guy named Chris Fulton that was a, kind of a Baker loc. So 9, 10, 12 of us. But we rode Baker. I went, the biggest of my life off that big thing. Laid it out in the back seat, wrote it out, and just was like, okay, it's doable. And then Robbie, and that's the in the book, you'll see Robbie.
Cool.
You'll meet him in a couple hours. He's doing the fence here today. He built the place we're in. And that day, we did some, like across the street from Baker, there's some mountain you can hike. You might know the name. I don't remember. It was some other peak. And Chris and Adam Brown knew where to take us. And Adam Brown was like an old guy from where we're from, a BMXer, incredible guy, Adam Brown. He lived there. So that was our liaison to like our hookup to Baker. But that day we hiked that fucker all the way to the top. Now, there's photos of it. We get all the way to the top, and every hit was like 10 and 20 foot drops. He just took us on 7 of them. It was like heli skiing or something for us, for guys who had no money. Like I was talking to Robbie the other day and I was like, do you remember that? Of course he remembers that day. We have the photo of it, Somewhere there's a photo of me doing the rolling the windows down, and we made zines out of that day. But what I'm getting at is that day I kept it in my pocket. Like I rode like a pro that day with pros.
Right.
Whatever. I landed tricks. I learned frontside threes that year, and I landed a frontside 3 off a lip and fucking rode away like guys I saw. And that was enough for me. See what I'm getting at? Like it was just like, I did it. I don't need to go fucking try to make a business out of this. That I hold it so close. I mean, I could tell you about Bachelor too, because it was just like 2 feet of snow. Me and Eric Campbell, 2 flatland fucks from Michigan, hike across, way over, into the fucking north side of Bachelor, past all the stuff, and go down a couple little lanes through these trees and stop. And there are 2 perfect carve lines that are, sine and cosine or whatever, just perfectly matched. And we just looked at each other and we're screaming. That's why we moved out there, to chase that and to do it when we weren't 40. I was 20 or 21 that year, and we did it. We were in the West riding with the fucking, here's the cool part about something I want to talk about. When I say riding with the dudes, that's a little weird because there were girls that were kicking ass too. It was really cool. Like we weren't, girls back home, it was different. The girls out West, they were just one of the gang. It was so cool. They were riding just as fast. One of the things we had to learn right away is how to ride fast. Yeah. Because you have to ride fast in the West. So when we would go home to Little Mount Holiday, you looked at the jumps differently. Suddenly it was like 2 jumps. You could almost clear the 2. I remember a buddy named Matt Miner, who I grew up with. Awesome guy, and from my high school. Matt went out West and was sponsored and stuff and did a bunch of stuff with Solid and whatever. But I remember, Matt coming home from the West, and we were all still holiday lokes, and he jumped 2 jumps at once. It just blew my mind. But see, he was coming from Colorado where they were doing it.
It's kind of funny that that's like a rite of passage that both you and I went through as being snowboarders. Yeah. Like when I went to the West as a boy and came back a man, where I was like had this new confidence and new self-assuredness. Like if I can do that, there's other things that I can do. Did you feel like that you made kind of a transition where you had more confidence in your life, or how did that kind of like affect your attitude?
Well, like I always ask Bridges, and Pat Bridges, I always ask Bridges, I say, hey, are there still kids moving to the West, loading up a Subaru, 6 of them, and they're going out in two rigs to go get oh, you want to do it?
No.
Okay.
Good.
Well, I always ask Bridges, I'll say, hey, are there still kids? Pat has his finger on the pulse of the sport. I don't look at this stuff anymore. I did for all those years. But I'll ask him and I'll say, are there still kids getting, 2 shitty Subarus with 6 of their buddies, loading it full of all their gear and moving to some ski town? Does that still happen? He says, yeah, it does. Because I was kind of told by buddies and marketers and industry people that were kind of transitioning out. That doesn't happen anymore. What they do is they fly 3 times a year and they watch the snow on some app and then they go, it's going to snow in Dingleberry Mountain, let's go there. And they get a flight to wherever, and it's just package deals or something. And that just broke my heart because we were rolling the dice. And I remember when we left, there was this frontier quality of like, fuck, what happens if we don't get a job while we drive home? What happens if the car breaks down? Straight up, we did it. And then my mom and dad weren't there with us. We had our money saved. Brian and I, we drove out in my Buick Skyhawk filled with shit. All the way to Oregon. I remember we got to Oregon and like rent was going to be a little bit more than we thought it would be. And we were trying to get, places going and we were filling out applications and we had no rental history. We lived with our parents back home. I remember we went to an IHOP on 97 there in Bend and we just kind of said, okay, here's the deal. Derek's got a job. We don't even have jobs yet. We're going to give this 1 week. If we can't find something in a week, maybe we'll go try Colorado. We had to have there was a contingent plan because it was like we were scared after a couple days. A day later, you get this, place called Felony Flats, and we move in. The guy makes us pay 5 or 6 months ahead of time because we're such a bunch of fuckheads, And we were going, and we were skateboarding it, at night when it would cool down, and then we were saving our money. I had a pizza job. And we were getting ready for the winter. Got all of our gear and all of our stuff and, the anticipation. But to answer your question, it was, imagine people in a covered wagon doing that shit. We got 1/100th little taste of that. What happens if this thing, what happens if it breaks down South Dakota? You thumb a ride to the next shit town. You go walk to the, gas station. The guy drives his rig out there and he gets it fixed and you keep on going. That's what happens. But we got out there and I remember that road trip every night. I remember where we stayed every night. That's 26 years ago. And it's like this summer is my 25th year in Oregon, right? Yeah. I've been out here longer than I was alive back there. That tipped a couple years ago. But it was so open. The crying when you leave your mom and dad. That was terrifying. I never saw my mom and dad weep like that, but this is the proverbial seminal leaving the nest, the safety and, having everything kind of covered and shit. I remember we got out west. We went, and hit like a Costco and got a bunch of ramen and bullshit and things and flats of, Cokes and just shit to live off. You go back to the house, we had nothing to cook it with. So we had to go to a dollar store and load up $30 worth of shit just to get things to put your ramen in or cook the stuff, strain it or whatever. We didn't have any of that shit. And it was so exhilarating to me because we were on our own. I'm so proud of that because to answer your question, it was just this thing of we controlled our little lives. We had to sacrifice. I'm not a partier. So I didn't fuck off when I was back home. I worked and saved my money and then got my ass out west. And it just all took off from there. You meet a couple buddies. Somewhere there I got to meet some guy that got me up to Alaska. Somewhere there I got to meet someone who was in design also, who worked for a snowboard company, be it, Jake Houseworth or Rob Morrow, these guys who were so cool to let us stay at their place. Jake or Robbie, if you're ever in Portland on the Lam, need a place to crash, I owe you a couple nights from 1993 when you let us stay up at the Thunderbird up at Mount Hood. Thank you. I owe you. These guys, who were we? We were a bunch of fuckheads from Michigan, and they let us stay at their place in Salem. And that night they're like, why don't you come up to Hood with us? And we did, because Derek had the inn, And I remember sitting and eating with Robbie Morrow. He was on my wall. And the names they were dropping, Schlingman, Richards. I was taking notes, man. All these years there, fuck Matt Schlingman. He was mean every time I talked to him, so fuck him. But Todd Richards was sweet every time. We went and saw Built This. I know you work with him, but Todd was a guy on my wall. And then when I met him up at camp, He couldn't have been more regular. He was so cool. What a fucking talent. Funny, artistic. And on top of that, wasn't listening to The Offspring. So I liked him a whole bunch. He wasn't listening. He was listening to good shit. He took me to see Built to Spill with a couple buddies of Brian Basold, and who else went that night? I don't know, Derek or something. Anyway.
It seems like, snowboarding back then, I'm not sure if it's like that today because I'm a little bit older now, but it's like, it was very welcoming. And you could be like a kid from anywhere and they would just take you in under their wings and show you the ropes. And so I got that experience. Was
it the same way in Tahoe where it's a little more like pounding in your chest? Like I
was in Colorado. I lived with TJ Lise. I never had that same attitude. I know what attitude you're talking about. He was just testing people. Yeah. Basically. I'm actually
fuck that guy 25 years later because he scared me. First of all, he was a little rough.
He scared a lot of people.
Well, right. And because, small dog complex or something. I'd love to see him now. He's probably some Trump supporter, probably a senator or something. Bunch of DUIs. I'm spitballing here. Well, fuck that guy. But moving right along. Sorry.
What's going on over there, Beef?
I'm just angry.
Why are you so angry?
I'm just an angry snowboarder.
Oh, come on, Beef. You're not that angry. Maybe we should have called up Kinger and have him cheer you up. Or better yet, we should just look at our Patreon page and see if anyone is supporting us this month.
Yeah, no, let's get stoked on snowboarding,
right? I'm actually stoked all the time.
Let's get stoked all the time.
On snowboarding. Yeah. And you know how we're going to do that?
By not being angry.
No, we're going to do it by telling the real stories of snowboarding and not having advertisers influencing us. And so normally, like in magazines and like social media, there's advertisers, people like Burton or LibTech or whatever. Right. But like part of the message then that you're conveying is their message. And you're kind of like carrying the water for these brands. And so we don't have to carry the water for anyone. I'll carry your water, I guess, Beef.
You already did earlier today.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, no problem.
So go to patreon.com/The Snowboard Project. We have different levels. They're outlined there on our Patreon page. Please support this independent voice in snowboarding media.
Okay, so were you doing art back then? Were you like already like art? And what kind of art were you doing if you were?
Analog. I didn't have a computer. I knew how to use it out of high school. 17 to 19, I learned, I got a degree from NMC in Traverse City, which was a 2-year associate's degree. That was what.
So pen and ink, what kind of art were you doing?
Well, I learned the computer, and it was the cusp of all this stuff. It was starting to explode for graphic design. But I get out west, and you just have pen, ink, paints. So I was painting. I took a painting class up at Cock on the Rock, COCC, in the community college in Bend. Took a painting class. So I was painting, and my mom would pay for that class because she'd say, "Listen, I'll pay $150 because I want you to stay in school and just be around that because you're coming back in 1 year, right?" Turned into 5 winters. So I was drawing pen and ink
for 5 years.
Well, for the first couple winters. And the first winter, I got to do a board graphic for Solid through Matt Hale and through friends, and they introduced us to the Wastels and all these awesome guys from Solid. And I got to work for what I thought was a really big company. I don't care.
I hit the big time.
I know,
now.
But I mean, all these years later, I don't give a fuck if they were small or whatever. Neil Rankin gave me a shot.
Yeah,
I owe a big part of whatever I have to Neil because. I hope he listens to this because that's the first guy. That's the first guy that gave me a shot. You know who else gave me a shot?
Who?
Smokin' Jay.
Smokin' Jay did.
All these years later, I've run, I got to meet all those guys from the mags. And people would say, "Oh, that's Smokin' Jay this." And I'd say, "You know what, man? Fuck you. That guy gave me a shot and let me put my illustrations into his little mags, man." Yeah. And that's a buddy of Baker's, So, I mean, I remember these names.
I already did a podcast with him because his heart is still there, man. His heart is still in the game.
And this might be off the record, but when you see him, you just tell him that Draplin said thanks and hello because every time I see him, I always hug him and just say, "Fuck, man, you were one of the guys. Thank you. Thank you." And we hug it out. So, at that time, there was no opportunities. It was just making my own way. I was drawing, I was doing things. But in Little Bend, I got a couple opportunities with Quality Snowboards or Rising Star Futons or whatever. It got to the point where I was doing freelance, all just drawing, illustrating, going and lettering chalkboards in Little Bend, Oregon, submitting illustrations to culture mags there and stuff of snowboard kind of related goodies and portraits and shit. So I was doing that. So I guess I was an illustrator, but just was continuing to draw and be creative. I'd make my own business cards and go sneak in. We had a buddy named Frankie Bolello. That was a couple of Hoosier assholes. Dave Sipnewski and Frankie Bolello's fuckers, man. But they were nice enough to us, and I loved Frankie. Dave is a handful, but Dave was cool, and Frankie would let me use his email. And then I could go sneak into that place and use PageMaker to make my own business cards or letterheads or whatever I was working on. But really when it took off is when I went the first year to Alaska, because that's where I saved $9,000 and I got to make the jump from analog to computer.
So this is while you're in Bend, you bought a computer.
I went up to Alaska in May of 96 and did 5 months washing dishes. It sucked, but it was beautiful. And you're up there in this, it's hard to call it God's country because, God's a weird word, but pretty prehistoric up there, and you're so thankful that you even get to be alive up in Alaska and have a summer run around, skateboarding around town, riding my bike around town. And I did that, came back in the fall, dropped $9,900 of 10 grand on a computer.
What was that computer?
That was a Power Computing 180. I remember it right down to the fucking spec.
Well, let's hear the specs on that.
I think it was
it's changed a lot.
I think it was I want to say it was like a 200 megabyte hard drive. I want to say something like that, and I still have it. It's out in the garage. Yeah. I'll never let it go. I fought tooth and nail to get that fucker. It's in the book. You'll see it in the book. I took a picture of it, of course. I'll never get rid of that thing. That thing opened the door. Because then that winter, I didn't have to have a pizza job. That winter, I worked freelance out of my bedroom. That's where I got the moniker Dark Cloud from one Jason McAllister. I want to say I have to credit that to, because one day these guys are going out drinking or fighting or fucking or whatever they're going to do, and he opens the door and he goes, let me check the weather, and he goes, oh, rain clouds. And I just go, too much light or something, close the door, and I'm working in here. And these guys go out and go run around, and I'm in there, working all night. And, Leah always talks about the 10,000 hour thing. Oh, I got my 10,000 hours. Easily within a couple winters. But I was able to sustain, and one of the first guys that gave me my first real gig was Lance Violet.
Okay.
So Lance was working at Smith out in, your neck of the woods there.
Scott.
Excuse me. Lance was working at Scott out in,
Sun Valley.
Sun Valley, which is your neck of the woods. Right across the street was Smith, but he was at Scott doing it. That's where I met Dabika. That's where I met Kevin Zacher.
Yeah.
And all these characters. And, Lance was cool, man. And I remember he gave me this one job of doing illustrations. Now, I went and spent 5 months, made 10 grand. And then I made $3,500 or $3,300 in about 7 or 8 days doing illustrations of all their gear, And it was like, I was hooked, like I can make this from my bedroom. To make pizza, to make $3,500 would have taken me, I don't even know, 3 months.
Yeah.
It's just too long. But I knew how to do that. One of the things that we talk about in some of these podcasts that go deep enough, it's the idea of ethic and work ethic. If the very best I could do was, well, look who just walked in. You've been all over this podcast, by the way, Mr. Hot Toys. This is the guy we went to Mount Baker with. Anyway, that's Rob. That's Robbie Hot Toys. He's the man who built this thing. Anyway,
okay, cool.
If you need anything, let me know. He gives me this. Yeah, motherfucker. You edit that part out. But, this idea of like determination.
Yeah.
Like, going up there and working all summer, you're with all these happy hikers, beautiful people that, I don't know, wear pants that zip down to shorts. They're up there to like recreate. I was up there to make money and get out of the hole, right?
Did you know you wanted a computer when you went on that mission?
That's why I went.
Okay.
I remember doing extra runs because it was like, fuck, I don't want to be on that train anymore. I would go there in the morning. You get up at 4:40. I'd pedal down to, if I could catch a ride, I'd catch a ride, but I'd pedal down to, this train station there in Anchorage, and I'd get on the train at 5:20 or something, 5:30. And every morning I'd be starting my day and get my dish pit ready. I remember I'd be on the edge of tears. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're ready just to break down crying. You don't want to be on this shit. Your buddies are down in they're seeing Lollapaloozas. They're camping all summer. They're river rafting. They're in the West. How the fuck those guys get to do that? Well, maybe their mom and dad cut them a check or something. I didn't have that shit. So I'm up there sharing the corner of a living room with a dog. And he got the best of me many nights, let me tell you. I'm going to get into it. If walls could talk. But it was incredible. And it was like, I did that, but I had the ethic. I had it down.
Yeah.
If it meant working all summer, I'd do it. When I got back west, when I got back to Bend, and it meant working all night in a bunch of projects to get freer and freer and freer, I had it down.
Was that from snowboarding? Was that from your dad? Where did that work ethic where did the seeds of that sprout?
I think it's just the Midwest where everyone has to have a job.
Yeah.
We don't. My mom and dad weren't the kind of people that could just cover everything. I worked since I was 13. Everyone had a job. That's how you got a car. A car got you freedom. A car meant you could, amass at some, ditch and skate all night. A car meant you could drive to Detroit and see a band or some shit. And this idea that like there was like a bit of a social status too. It's like if you don't have a job, what are you doing? You're not as productive. What are you doing? And here's the thing. It's like my dad had a job since he was 12. Like we found this thing that we were digging around. This is amazing. This little ledger my dad kept from like 1958 when he would have been in about 9th or 10th grade up till 1976. We found this little ledger that my dad kept from 1959 or 16 when he was like 10th, 11th grade, all the way up until 1976, 77, detailing how much money he gave my grandma every week. And those first years, he's in 10th grade and he's giving her $10 a week. So what's $10 even mean in 1959? Well, it's like $60 or something. But imagine having to give up $10 of whatever you're making just to take care of your mom, So that was my dad all those years. Mm-hmm. And by the time we get to 1976, you're seeing 120 a week or whatever it was, and like taking care of her. So there was no one else to really do that. He had 2 older brothers. I don't know if they had families and shit. So,
maybe once you became successful, you kind of left it in a place where you could find it.
Maybe.
Hint, hint.
It's being pounded when you're 13. Like, okay, you got to go get a job, bud. Yeah. This is what you do. You work. And then, of course, you go to school, and we expect a 3.0, 2.8 or something. And then you go to your job at night. And I would do 30 hours a week, mainly on the weekends. But I worked that job at a pizza place from 13 to 17 and a half, all through high school.
You still make good pizza?
Oh, I would love. So there's a place 10 blocks from here that we'll go every now and again called Pizzicato. And I got to know one of the managers 7, 8 years ago. And I'd say, hey, man, could I come in and just be an employee for the night? And he's like, Draplin, we're not going to let you come in here. Come on, you're a designer, you do this and that. And I said, listen, I'll donate the money. I'll give the money to the delivery guys, or I'll just take that $70 I made or whatever and give it to the rest of the people. I just miss making pizza.
Yeah.
I mean, I
still make pizza too. I love it.
I love it. I mean, I think of all the things that you did. I remember when I was I washed dishes at a Chinese restaurant. Did not like it. Yeah. I liked making the dough. I liked, prepping. I liked getting there. I loved being slammed, being with all your buddies. There were fist fights. I learned about Metallica. The first Crush, all that shit was in this sphere of this little corner place in a strip mall called Crusted Creations, and this is, what's your high school experience? I have it all detailed somewhere in all my shit here in the shop. I have every one of my paycheck stubs. Real hoardery, but I kept track of all that shit.
You're pretty well organized for being a hoarder, I gotta say.
Things are real hoardery.
Yeah.
It's
okay. So you're making money though. You're in Bend, Oregon. You're making money like doing design at night, being a dark cloud, so to speak.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And but then you decided to go back to school. How did that happen?
Well, I think what it was. This thing is just so. I just want to touch this thing. I think what it was realizing there was a cap, and realizing that in even Little Bend, Oregon, straight up, there were a couple guys that ran the roost, and there's no way that you're gonna Like, it's just not even cool to try to overtake them. Like, first of all, who even thinks that way? There's one screen printer, and that one screen printer has one killer illustrator. And then there's one other, like Ross Wordhouse, who was doing graphics in Bend, Oregon. And he was my hero. He's already doing it. I just started to see the writing on the wall. This town's not big enough for 50 of us, 5 of us, or even 3 of us. I just didn't want to mess with that. So what it was I met a couple guys who worked for Bonfire up in Portland. Up at one summer at camp. I did a summer at camp in 1995 and got to meet, Todd Richards and Chris Coyle, and just so many heads, scrubby guys, pro guys,
the EI guys.
I got to meet you fuckheads. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I got to meet guys from the East Coast, we met up there, whatever. But, it was just this, when I came back, it was like, wait a second. Some of those guys, the EI guys, they made a magazine, man. Is that 6? I don't know. You guys gave me a stack of them. They're upstairs in the vault. But they were doing their own thing. And I just saw that, like, Bend, I probably could have done it, but I was just hungry to see what was next. What it really tipped me was going outside of snowboarding and looking at, like, Powell's books and starting to see, like, design annuals. Because if I only looked at snowboarding, I still found all my heroes, of course. If I only looked at skateboarding, Jim Phillips was enough for me all those years. But that's Santa Cruz. Or looking within snowboarding, whatever was going on, at that time, whatever it was. I had my heroes, but I started to get this sense that, like, there was something bigger. And it's like, I got to go a little bit bigger, and I got to go and just see what's out there. Because number one, I want to make a living at this stuff. But I don't have school under my belt. Because I had met a couple people who would say, I went to so-and-so Art Institute. I met too many people that would say, I went to 4 years of this, and now I'm working for something up in Portland. And it was the sort of, like, consistency.
They had progression.
The sort of consistent. Oh.
I got to put plastic over the door again. I'll do the same things I did yesterday. I'm going to
Cool.
pack it down. If you need to get out, just go ahead and peel it up.
All right. Thank you. There was a through line. They had this school. So I was freaked out that I was missing something. Like, I thought really that there was an accreditation issue. Like, hey, whether or not your portfolio is killer, they're going to look and see if you have that box checked. If you don't have it checked, you're just hurting yourself. It turns out that's just not true. But I thought it was. I didn't know any better. Where I'm from, if you're lucky to go to school, you do. I got to meet people. It was just a prerequisite of them growing up. It was just, this is just what you do. We didn't have it that way. You were lucky to go. You took a bunch of loans out. My mom and dad covered my first 2 years, couple $1,000 at NMC. I was privileged even to have that. I had other buddies that couldn't do it. I had other buddies who pissed it away. Anyway, when I went back to MCAD, I knew it was going to be a whole new just chapter. I was going to get out of snowboarding a whole bunch, and that was really exhilarating. But, to do this with you and talk with you, really, it was the spirit of what all that shit, being nothing taught me. It was like, you could go be whatever the fuck you wanted. It might not mean that you're going to be big, but you'll do it with your buddies. And that is always going to be part of me. If I would have got some hole shot and got some big job, it could have changed everything. But no, when I got out of school, I was courted with big jobs and agencies. But I took the job with you because I knew you guys from a summer up at camp. I knew your spirit. You were fuckheads. And I'd rather be with a bunch of fuckheads who are doing good art and good writing and funny shit than go with the guys where there's a bigger paycheck. See what I'm saying? Like, that, why didn't I? See, as a Midwestern warrior who went to school, who went to Alaska and did not party and just worked all summer, I made some rash decisions that could have went bad. Moving to California, that was really tricky for me because I could have stayed and had a killer job in Minneapolis, but I wanted to go work in snowboarding. I wanted to go work and see if I could do it. It turns out I could, but I didn't know that shit. So you guys opened the professional door for me. I don't want to say we're necessarily professional those 2 years while we were there. We weren't even close, but still, it was the fucking best.
It was fun though. It was authentic. It was real.
It was
right?
perfect because I got to meet Pat Bridges. I got to know you, Mark. I got to meet Jeff Baker. I got to be good buds with Evan Rose, that pile of shit. I can go down the line. Yeah. Chief and Cody and, even Karen.
Yeah.
But, it was scary to be down there, but it was like, okay, this is the first culmination moment selfishly for me. I did my time out west. I learned how to ride. I went and finished up my schooling, and now I'm going to practice. And I'm so lucky to do it with a bunch of other fuckheads. You know what I mean? Like, it could have killed me and squashed me if I would have went to some big agency and saw the way it kind of really goes. Instead, I remember getting down there and you just kind of said, we make our own rules. If we're working late tonight, we're working late tonight. You remember like doing the all-nighters where you had me sleeping in there and you'd wake me up and have me do another 8 hours? That teaches you something so weird that, first of all, it teaches you precisely this. We have this much time and we got to get the shit done. And this idea of like, no. I leave at 4:59 and I'll be back at 9 tomorrow morning. That's for tax paying, regular ass, forgettable motherfuckers. Yeah. I got down there and you guys gave me the license to say, we're going to work all night. We'll feed you. And we're going to knock this motherfucker out in 5 days. It was so cool because I took that with me to make Snowboard Mag. I took that with me to go work at Cinco. I took that with me to work on Cole and Union. We started those things in basements. So the idea that we were in the perch at Snowboarder working until all hours of the night, I'm so glad I had that because it just showed me that you could be an animal, still make it happen, still keep the Norbs and all, the powers that be cool, and enjoy it along the way. Like, I thought it was just going to be like one of those goes away. Just look at it like this. You like the work. You like the people you're with. You like the job that you're around. The only thing that hurt down there is I didn't like being in SoCal. But whatever, we were in fucking air conditioning all day and
paradise.
You got to meet Randy out back, who was awesome.
He's still out back, actually. Down
is he?
there.
Oh man, if you see Randy, just tell him to Draplin. Tell him I'm still alive. Oh, if you see Ruth, tell her I still got a bad case of the Ruths. All these years, I still got a bag. I'll never lose that. If you see Meehan, tell him I'm still alive. I mean, you know what? Anywhere I went, I hope I was a good person. And people like to be with me. I tell this story about how I would go over to Surfer and Jason Murray, who's a buddy, all these years later, but he was a little prickly, some snowflake from coming down from the hill, coming into the beach zone. And I remember one time that little Kozai coming after me and saying some shit. And I looked at him, I go, listen here, Kozai, fucker. You're like a piece of bait. I put you on a hook and I cast out and I catch something bigger. Or something to that fucker. He's sitting there, cross-legged with the little sandals and the little shorts and just, dripping or something. I would go over into that fucking surf zone and get complete no respect. And I love to tell that story now to Murray because Murray'd be like, I know, man, we were just very serious about what we did. He had a lot in his shoulders. And I remember going over there and Murray's got 1,000 photos and stacks out. And I go, hey, look at this, another guy in a wave. And he just goes, Draplin, out. I go, whoa, that's a green wave. And that's a brown wave. Whoa, look at this guy's got no shirt. He goes, Draplin, the fuck out of here. Because, the idea that we were there and we were making our own way.
Did it help you that like you were doing something that you had a background in and enjoyed? Like you were working at Snowboarder versus say working on, I don't know, Walmart logos. What role did that play?
Well, here's the deal. You don't make as much. I'll be very blunt about it. When I got down there, it was $37,500. And see, what was really exciting about that, frankly, that was $25,000 or $27,000 more than I'd ever made ever in my life. Coming the year before that, $10,000 up in Alaska, and a couple of $4,000 or $5,000 in, over the course of the year in Bend freelancing. That's only $16,000 or $17,000 or whatever. And then to get there and make $37,500, I thought I was set. I knew how to live off $15,000 a year like a king and didn't know any better. But the reality of it was, after paying my rent, toll roads, stuff, things, Vons, every now and again a splurge at In-N-Out or Z Pizza. I had like $50 a month left over. Yeah. And I had to go to Chief and say, either you guys pay me more or I'm going home. At the time, Nixon was courting me. Remember I got down there and these guys were like, hey, come work with us. I was going to do my 2 years. Well, Chief gave me a raise to 50. And that allowed me to save $4,000 and $5,000 kind of a year for those 2 years I was down there. At least pay back my credit cards from all the time up in Alaska and time in Minneapolis. But I made $50,000, and that felt like I had hit the jackpot, and I was so thankful. And it wasn't about the hours, but the thing is like, at least then the scary part was covered. Now I had a good set of wheels, I could get back and forth, and I love the guys I was with. These weren't coworkers. These are the same fucks I would have been on a chairlift with, and we went and did that a couple of times. We went to, New Zealand or British Columbia, or maybe we should recount the time we went on the motorcycle, maybe we should recount the time we went on the snowmobiles, Mark. But
I tell that story all the time. I
don't want to talk about it. I'm still scared.
I own that story because it's like, that was a mistake, but I look back at that and I've never done that since.
Hey, what's up, guys? Beef here. I know you're probably kicking back in your room with your headphones on, or maybe you're in your car on the way to work, or maybe coming from work. And I just want to say thank you for tuning in and listening. It is people like you that make this worth it for guys like Mark and I to make these episodes for you. Please do us a favor. Will you please rate us, share us, tell your friends, spread the word. We want to be able to keep making this happen. And if you can also go to patreon.com/the Snowboard Project, you can check us out and you can help us keep creating these podcasts for you. We are an independent voice in snowboard media, meaning we don't have anybody that we are beholden to. We don't have anybody that says, hey, maybe you shouldn't talk about that, and that is why this is special. So thank you for being a supporter of that. If you feel like supporting us, or if you don't, hey, either way, at least you're tuning in. So please share, please like, please rate, please let us know how we can be better. Patreon.com/the Snowboard Project.
One of the things that scared me about out west is I remember a time Marcus Eggy, who was very versed in like how slides work and how avalanches work and how to test the snow. Man, we are from Michigan. We used to broom snow. We used to push the snow, sweep the snow on a golf course to make a booter. Yeah. And then a golf course does a little bit of a yin-yang, and then you put a little kicker at the end. You come down the one strip of 2 feet of white, hit the little booter, and land on another strip of white. And we'd do that all night and film it and have a fucking killer time. When we got out west, we didn't understand that you go, the first day it pounded 20 inches, we were up there. I remember I fell, caught an edge, fell backwards, and kind of snapped my head back as I landed. And we were all laughing, and I look over, and there's this sharp piece of cinder cone, but 6 inches from my head. What if I was one? I would have died, crack, and would have died. It would have cut me open like an egg, right? Yeah. We didn't know about that shit. Not only did we trash all of our preseason boards from the year before, it was a real education. So I had this reverence in me of like, ooh, buddies are starting to hike around Bachelor, even though they're just these little doodad offshoots of the sisters and shit. I'm not interested. The snow is packed down at Bachelor. Be careful when you go out of bounds, because we saw the signs I had that. So when I got the access with you guys, and suddenly we were allowed to be in a helicopter maybe, or go and use an awesome sled for the day, it was scary, because I just knew that these things could bite back. The West, I always tell kids, be careful, the West will bite you back. Because if you go down a 2-track in Michigan, you might get caught in the mud. But frankly, you can walk back out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Here, every year, some well-meaning guy in a Subaru goes down a mountain road in Montana. The snow comes in 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches. Before he knows, he can't get his Subaru out of that thing, and his family is snowed in some pass. That is the West. It's a Forest Service road or something. That shit happens. One time, my dad and I were driving back to Michigan. We did, basically Oregon to Michigan back. And in February, that's a roll of the dice. And we went up high, too, like Highway 2 and shit, across the parts of Canada and all the way 2 across Montana, a bunch of 94. Anyway, bone dry the whole way. But Dad's like, let's go see a ghost town. Now, this is like, I got my phone. I have to like dial in for like whatever I was getting for my service, like 2005. And I find a ghost town on the map. So we're going to go drive this thing. And, we just kind of take you're on the big highway. You go to the secondary road. You go to a dirt road. Next thing you know, the dirt road's starting to lift. And I'm starting to keep track. Like, oh, we've gone 300 feet. Now we've gone 1,000 foot. And that just went from dirt to wet dirt to a little bit of a dust to some snow. And there's clouds rolling in. I said, Dad, we can't go any farther because we're just going over this next hill. We're going to get caught back here because the snows came in. That night, it dumped 2 feet there or something, outside a bridge or whatever the fuck we are. The idea that like something snapped inside me where I was like, we got to get out of here because we're going to get caught. We're in a Passat wagon. My dad, how much meat could you get off my dad at the height of his girth? It's a pretty good amount. I was always thinking
you could
about
have been living for a week anyway. So
he could have cut me open and climbed in me like a fucking tauntaun, but we don't need to get into that. Anywho, there was this like, to get back to your, when I got out there and I was with my buddies, I'm so thankful. There was no riches to be had. It was just more like I got to know, one of the greatest humans I've ever met, Jeff Baker. How sweet he is and how even keel he is, and just what a fucking incredible human he is. I miss Larry and I miss Baker from making Snowboard. I miss you and Bridges and Baker and Chief from making the mag. That's 17 years ago. But I do miss that. Like we all go have lunch. I miss Gary Hansen. I miss Gary just in general. But, we put all that together and it's like, that's not what I hear when I talk to people at agencies. Yeah. They don't pine for like, I miss having all of us here for like fried chicken night. Like, Larry, senior editor Larry's going over to fucking Popeyes and bringing back fried. Oh, it was delicious at the end of the mag. We did that a bunch of times and like, I miss that stuff. You don't hear that. You hear I don't know how to say it. Now there's all this like forced culture shit, like, oh, we're all going to hang out and do yoga and shit together.
Yeah. So what was it like making that transition from Southern California, working with your buddies, to working at an agency, Cinco, when you moved back to Portland?
Oh, it was fucking incredible. There's a tendency to have this interest in you, eyeballs on you, to like disparage something, and for me to say, well, I made the leap out of Cinco to go work on my own. No. Let me spend a couple seconds and just say, those guys were tight. Nixon, Gravis, all kinds of Nike and all kinds of cool shit. It was awesome. First of all, when you walked into the place, they had all these nice fixtures and nice drywall and nice desks and nice
drywall. Okay, keep going.
You know what I'm saying? Like, someone didn't just shit that out and then they put a coat of paint on it. They designed all of it.
Yeah,
the walkways and the things. There was a feng shui guy they brought in which is Jesus. No, I got some oceanfront property in Kansas. I'll sell you too. But they brought in that kind of shit, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm clean, I'm organized. Dean Gross is watching over me, an account manager. Like, I miss Dean from Cinco because he knew what an animal I was. I'd play ping pong all day. He'd be like, get back here at 3 and you can knock out 2 hours for me, right? Yeah, no problem. And I would. But I started to have some resentment because I was like, man, why the fuck am I coming in at 9 or 10 and dinking around playing ping pong when I could just come in at like 2 or even 1 and really knock it out? But what scared me even further than that, it's not anything to do with Cinco. Being on the phone with clients, and I won't really talk about it specifically, but it does rhyme with Flixen. Being yelled at by fuckers from Nixon on the phone.
Yeah.
And
like yelled at, like eviscerated.
Not me, but our crew. Over what? Over colorways of a fucking watch? I mean, I got out of that meeting and I felt like I was going to cry. Because he yelled at Kirk, who was our leader. This guy's good. Kirk James is one of the greatest graphic designers I have ever seen. Iterations, type, logos, how to build a brand, how to be an industrial designer. That guy does it all. I got to work with him, for him. To have these guys yell at us, I get it. They're stressed. But it was just like, we're making you millionaires. We're making you guys millionaires. Don't yell at the thousandaires. That's where I get this quote I made. Millionaires don't get to yell at the thousandaires. Fucking ever. And after that meeting in, March of 2002, we were faithful to that process. They wanted Teen watches, we give them 140 to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they wanted 10, we gave them 100. You know, that was just the process. Kirk instilled that in me, that you have the time. Let's knock it out. Let's work late. Let's do this thing. And he made Nixon awesome. But after that meeting, I talked to Goo and I said, fuck that. They're set. They're big goddamn Carlsbad homes and shit. They're set. And we're scrubs working up on this. Fuck this. I'd rather have nothing and not have to endure that, and at least just work with what I thought were, you know what I mean? But then you go one step past the guy who yelled at us to all the sales managers and all the guys, and they were great. And to this day, I still love a call from Hofer. I still love a call, you know what I mean? Or any of these characters. So I get it. It's just one guy that yelled. It was just this one afternoon where it was like, man, that did not need to happen. If we screwed up, say we're sorry. But why are people yelling? There's like organic juices in the fucking refrigerator. We got it real good. There's no reason to be yelling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this isn't like, have you ever been punched in the face, Mark?
Sure.
Okay. It's a long time ago for me, 4th grade or something. But I've had a guy swing at me when I was 18 years old. He was a foreman when I was a tree trimmer. I worked with a bunch of gorillas and did it. And knew how to get swung at by a dumbass. He was making fun of me because I was reading on my lunch hour.
Yeah.
And I go, at least I can read. You know. And then he was after me. He was a 40-year-old guy named Dale, and I'm an 18-year-old punk who's, you know, cleaning trees out of this, you know, out of the brush and stuff. Well, whatever. I knew how to handle those assholes and be nice, be accommodating, or fuck with them. That scared me. And it was just kind of like, a little heartbreaking, because it was like, here I am working on one of the coolest things in all of action sports. And here's the deal. I'd go home at night. I was freelancing a whole bunch. I had contacts from you guys from Snowboarder. Chief would call me and dangle a $1,000 little something. And that $1,000, that was a good, strong week at Cinco. If I could do that in a night for Chief, I'm going to do that for one night for Chief. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What happened was it tipped. I started making more money back at the ranch, back at my little shitty apartment, than I could ever make at Cinco. And that's when I jumped out. That's all, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not Cinco that was the bad deal. It was more just like, these guys were really well organized. They're, to this day, they're 70 or 80 or 60 people or something. That continues to grow. It's awesome, you know. Look what Vin's done, you know, to go from, you know, 3 of those, you know, 2 knuckleheads, 2 brothers, 2 buddies in Vermont, you know, whatever, to like 3 to 7 to 17 to 150 now. Yeah. Fuck, bless them. I love them. It's awesome. Vin is a buddy, you know, and a hero, you know, and but that shit scares me too. It's just like, I don't have to wear pants here, you know. I'm practiced in these little quips, but it's like, you know.
So it seems like, I mean, for what you do, you could have a bunch of people working for you. Why are you still like kind of a solo operation here?
Well, do the numbers. Why do people have people working for them? Does it make it easier for you? Does it make it, do you make more money? I'm not really concerned with any of that. You know, the one or the couple times when I worked at Cinco, I started to learn how to delegate just a little bit. I had a couple kids that worked not for me, but they were just junior designers, and I was a senior designer, whatever. I never made it feel like they were the crumbs. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I said words like, well, we're going to do this and we're doing that. And if the younger guy did a little pass at it and I had to go take it farther, I wasn't letting it leave my hands and go to Goo or go to anyone until I thought it was tight and right. Mm-hmm. You know, to go to Kirk or whatever. Not me, not my team, us. We all did it together.
Right.
And when I got my own and started to get really busy and I would bring help, it was just really hard to to have to break someone's heart and say, man, I can just get this done faster on my own. So I'm just going to do it that way. I watch a kid's face go, that shit sucks. So I know my limitations. Mm-hmm. And then past that, you make more, And then I just found a sweet spot where it's like, okay, I am going to there's not a lot of, you can't take a bag of balance to the bank, right?
Yeah.
You can't take a bag of cool to the bank. This is a Bob Gumby thing, Bob from C3 up there. he would say things to us that were so beautiful and folky and perfect. He would say stuff like, fellas, we're not selling catalogs. And he would right the ship. We're toiling over this and that. And he would just put us right into the right direction and be like, right, we're selling hats. Let's get our ass back to making sure the hats, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I loved him for that. That's great perspective, And he'd say, you can't take a bag of Cool to the bank, fellas. You can try. You can't pay your mortgage with Cool. You pay your mortgage with a paycheck. And, where people would say, well, how can you work so much and like have this imbalance? You cannot take a bag of balance to the bank. I had bills. I had a mortgage. I had a school loan. I had credit card debt. So I started fighting back. When I got on my own, the first couple jobs were from Stick and Fank, and that allowed me to get a home. I did a bunch of, 2 or 3 series of snowboards and got like $20,000 or something, and that allowed me to get a home. That was 2004. Mm-hmm. A couple years later, I'm hammering. I'm starting to get ahead, and I get my stuff paid off. Like the first thing was my school loan. The first thing was my credit cards. Then it was my school loan. Next thing you know, 2012, I paid the house off. Then you start getting ahead. You're starting to get ahead, and you're getting, I never in my life thought I'd have $100,000 in the bank. That was some years ago, because that meant that's a whole year salary. I could take a whole year off. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you start taking zeros off that shit, it was like with $10,000, that's 3 or 4 months of good living. I could go take 3 or more months of good living and have $10,000 to pay my rent and this and that and this. Take another zero, $1,000. $1,000 meant first time I had $1,000 extra. That meant I could fly home a couple times. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
$100 meant I had enough for a couple records at, Everyday Music or Jackpot or whatever it was going to be here in town. $100. So you start doing that stuff, and you start saving that stuff, and you start adding zeros, and before you know it, you're like an adult. And there's some years gone by. So I got ahead, and I like to think I did it ethically, and I like to think that I did it with hard work and determination, and a little bit of, I don't know, just some elbow grease.
Did it come to the point at a certain time when like the companies you're working for, you almost outgrew them as far as like they couldn't, there were other companies out there that would pay you more for your time than these companies could afford?
Well, I will say this, to Cole and Union's credit, I helped with Brad. Brad invented this thing with a bunch of buddies, and I got to be the cake decorator. That was 2002. His first initial catalog was 16 hats, and that was 2002, and we just went for it. And that's a real company all these years later. Brad hasn't moved on. He's trying some new stuff. But he saw it in me. He saw something in me. The only reason I got the gig is because Goo was already snatched up by Holden. And I got words for Goo. I got words for John Femister all day long. Anyway, but John was already going to work with Holden. He had enough going on, with Goo. Yeah. And then Brad goes slumming and finds this Draplin guy that'll take on his brand, and that's when that fucker hit the jackpot. But the idea is, I worked for them for 10 or 11 years, and it became a real thing, and it was a real retainer, and it was not a good salary. It was a fucking awesome salary made by a bunch of knuckleheads up in Seattle for me. So thankful. Now you stack another one of those on top of that, and you get into George and Martino. It's pretty cool, because Martino made it so George could work. Martino made it so I could work. Martino made it the greatest. Well, I'm a little biased, but the coolest snowboard binding company still going and still strong. Union, Mm-hmm. I worked for them for 10, 11 years. But the thing is it wasn't really about the money. It was just more like it got to the point where it was like, you guys, I can't look at another snowboard binding layout. I just can't do it. It's someone else's battle now.
Right. After 10 years of laying out 30 bindings on a page or whatever, it was just like, okay, I've done this.
Every year when Martin would show up, you would see the excitement in his eyes. He's designing his life. Cool, yeah. Man. I am so privileged to have helped him. And I love that he's a brother of mine forever. We're going to see him in about 3 weeks. He comes to Portland for an afternoon, and we're got a couple little projects. But he gave me sustenance. He gave me security, and that's why I started to save money, And that meant if George needed anything, he called me, and I knocked it out. Bam. If Brad needed anything, every day he was biting off a little something. Here, I'm going to break this little piece off. Go. Need this. And we would knock out. They would come down to Portland, just like we did the mag, and I would lock Brad in the basement, and we would knock it out over 4 or 5 or 8 days or whatever. Tears and spit and fight and fucking and everything else. And he'd leave with a catalog. Like, it can be like that. But here's the thing, to answer your question. No, they're still going. You take a look at, what Union's doing with Joel, or you take a look at, graphically, or you take a look at what, Cole's doing with Matt and Joe. It's awesome. And they're still making cool shit, good graphics, good little details and great stuff, I miss being on the phone with Joe, and I miss Joe Florence. I miss being on the phone with, all of them, those are become your family again. But it was just more like, you guys, I don't look at snowboard mags anymore. I had my day.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I'm interested in bands. I'm interested in working on brands. I'm working to see who might call me outside of the shred realm. So in the last 7 years now, when someone calls from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, someone called from Transworld, wanted me to redo their masthead. That's pretty cool. I wouldn't have done the job just out of allegiance to Snowboarder, a little bit. But I think they owned Snowboard at the time or something, or vice. I don't even know what it was.
Did you redo their masthead?
No, I didn't. I just told the kid, I go, you need to get a kid on the hill.
Yeah.
You need to get someone who is, and I gave a bunch of names, and I said, you know what? These are guys that are still doing it. They're doing solid work. They're the appropriate, because here's the deal. When it gets to the point where I'm not up in the hill, it's not appropriate for me to work on it. It's like I had different interests. If I was a kid saving my money all winter, if I was a kid saving my money all summer to get my gear for the next winter, and I found out some 40-year-old muskox was working on my shit in a basement in Portland, I'd be a little bummed. Because for me, the people you met from Burton or from this or from that or from whatever, they were one of us. They spoke the language. They were up on the hill together, and it could be like that. It came from our hand, for us, by us. Not this shit where I'm swooping back in for a nice paycheck. And, I hope Martina listens to this, and I hope that Brad listens to this, because, those guys gave me a hell of a life for 10 years. And I gave them, they were my number one and number two. And, that's just all there is to it. The mag was even third, because those guys, it was a steady paycheck, and there was always something to knock out. So, when kids come after me now and they say shit like, well, yeah, this Draplin, all he does is these thick lines. All he does is shows dead stuff. All he does is, turns out all he does, it's a good long list. I'm really proud of that. But I love to go remind them and say, hey, Peckerwood, go dig around Union and Cole. That hat you're wearing, I made the logo on it. Jen did the colors. Joe built the thing. Brad sold it, designed it. Go down the line and say, so shut up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things, but I don't need to. That's in the book. That's in the book. That's different, because now it's like kids don't know about, well, a whole bunch of years where it was just grindstone.
Right.
You guys remember? You come and make the mag, and I was dipping in 19 things. When we would get done for the day and you would finally go up to the sweat pit to crash, I'd be punching in for Union for a couple hours, or Cole, or something for Chief, or something, It started to transition where more and more people were calling me that had nothing to do with snowboarding. Mm-hmm. It was really kind of exciting.
So nowadays it's like you're doing basically non-action sports, non-snowboarding, but some really big clients, and your work now gets seen by a much bigger audience than it did 10 or 15 years ago. How did that transition take place? Like, what was your first big job where someone came knocking on your door? You're like, really, me?
Well, Ford, do some icons, was pretty big. That was about 2010. Mr. Obama, through friends of, well, it's not like Barry called me or something, but when I got to work for the president, which was through a thing called Mode Project, who were fans of what I do back in 2008 and 2009. And called and wanted me to pinch hit, and pinch hit for the Mode Project, who were working for Mr. Obama. 2 years before, they did his logo for his campaign.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. So when we got to work on the ARRA, which is American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or whatever it was, the acronym, that was pretty cool. Because I got to work for America, not just good, liberal, democratic, IKEA-loving, Portland hipster liberals, whatever. No, all of America.
Trump too.
Not Trump. Fuck Don Trump. Fuck Don Trump for 1,000,000 years, for 666 years, for fucking square root of 6 years. Fuck Don Trump, all his cronies. If you're listening to this and you're playing some fucking libertarian game, fucking shame on you. If you're listening to this and you're playing some game where you say, oh, well, he's this. Fuck that racist. Fuck that xenophobe. Fuck that misogynist. Fuck that bully. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I say this in
He's
all
a
my
bully,
he's
for
a
sure.
you know whether or not it's the swamp or not the swamp. The part that hurts me the most about him, he's a bully. He's a rich kid that got to push less good-looking people around, and he can't. You know, here's the deal. Well, I'll quit talking about that piece of shit. He can't even tell the truth about his fucking hair.
Yeah.
Everything else is a sad, inadequate, sort of attempt at just trying to be accepted or being the best or whatever. And he fucking hoodwinked America. He took it from America. And I just, the part that sucks is I go to a lot of rural places in my travels, and I go to a lot of places where there's good old boys.
Yeah, there's Trump supporters.
And they do this kind of, well, he's draining the swamp. No, he's not. He has the worst of the worst around him. Because, a piece of shit's going to attract shit. Look at all of it. And it's like the part that hurts the most. These are hardworking motherfuckers who don't have the privileges we even had. They had to hammer. They had to hammer. And they think this guy's going to make shit better for him. God, they're just taking it so hard. It's just so weird, So whatever, fuck that guy. You might want to just clip all this shit out.
No,
fuck that guy.
I think people should hear they should hear your opinion on anything really, because I think that you're an opinionated
I know,
guy.
but if it was Hillary, blah blah, you know what? It would have been business as usual. But at least she had dignity. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
At least she had to go. And I know right now people are going, how dare Ben got God damn it. She gave her whole life to this stuff. Is it business as usual? Of course it was. Would there be slimy deals? Welcome to politics.
Yeah.
It's funny how this piece of shit makes another piece of shit like Ted Cruz look good. Isn't that funny?
It's crazy.
He sounds great.
Yeah.
But I have these dreams, and in my dreams, I'm in a crowd, and we're in some hotel lobby, and guess who's walking in? And the cameras are going off, and it gets quiet just for 1 second. And he looks me in the eye, and I go, "Hey, Don Trump, Aaron Draplin thinks you're a big piece of shit." And the cameras all get going again, and he keeps on going. But at least I said it man to man, human to human. You're a turd. Anyway.
Yeah.
Don't forget to support advertising-free snowboarding media at patreon.com. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.
Let's get back to design, shall we?
Yeah, leave that in your pocket.
Tell me about like 3 jobs maybe that you had that you were either most nervous about, that were the most challenging, that you had to dig the deepest inside to pull off and do adequately.
Well, there's been some big logos that were scary. Westwood one was a big one because, it's a big operation. They didn't know. Maybe they knew it was just me in my basement. They didn't really know. But, you dig into it, you do the research, and you do, comp, and you're looking at their competitors, and you're showing them this comp, you're tuning it and finding something, and we hit something. That's really exciting because I was terrified. That was a big one. Some Nike stuff, only because the process out there is world-class, and the jobs are world-class. It's like those guys aren't fucking around. They're not necessarily there for their health. They're there to do good work and make a lot of cash. That's pretty sweet. It's just maybe kind of not for me in some respects, but those were terrifying because It's not like if it's me and you in the basement, you can tell me to go fuck off, wake me up and get me going, and vice versa. I could say, leave you guys, whatever. I could, in a gentler way, tell Baker, I'm tired, man. I'm going to bed, and he'd do a couple more hours and sleep a little later. We had that currency between us. It's not like that when you're in the big leagues. And maybe that's just in my brain. But, even when you start to go a little bit smaller, working for Trevor at Nemo, I was just like, I just want to perform. I want to do a good job, be an animal like I am, but not have that show on the page, overexceed, and try to make him something sweet. But, specifically, it was scary working for Obama, of course, because that's working for all of America. It was scary working for Ford. But, you're seeing the through line here, which is like, these are just big honking things.
It's going to get printed on like thousands of business cards and
it's just going to be
letterhead and all over the place, right?
It's just going to be used in a lot of stuff. And it's my favorite thing to do, obviously, is a bud comes in with a little clothing brand or a little band or just something small, and their little food cart is only going to go so big, and you know that. But it's primal. It's like they need a t-shirt. They need a hat. I can help them make all that shit. You know, they need stickers. They need stuff to tape the sandwich up with, you know, and it's like, you don't need to go get the awesome tape. Let's just get you some stickers and print them out with a fucking toner printer here at the shop. You know, I'm from that world where it is, we can just do it and still have a good little presentation. You know, it's like, I really love that stuff because, you know, you can't pay your rent with a lot of that shit, but you can sleep at night. You know, so there's a balance. Like, if, you know, when you ask me, why don't you have a bunch of people working here? For what? For more money? I make enough. For what? Glory? I don't give a fuck about awards, you know, or who's the best in graphic design. I don't give a shit. You know where that goes all the way back to? Snowboarding and skateboarding. Because at Mount Baker, at Bachelor, you know, we got to go in there, and like one winter, it was this guy named Alistair who was the best. He's such a
Alistair Schultz, right?
And nice guy, kind of a hippie kind of, you know, just a really nice guy, and real kind of earthy and God, he went the biggest in the pipe that year. You know, he just went giant. One year it was Lael Gregory, fucking nice guy. But the fact of the matter is, even though we knew all those guys, one year it was Marcus Egg, a couple years it was Marcus. You know, that's the top. I was okay being in the 40th percentile or whatever, even the 12%, whatever. It wasn't about who was the best ever. I remember a couple of times being on the lift with like Marcus, you know, Eggy, Dave Sipnewski, JD, you know, Platt or something, you know, all of us on this lift again. And I was like, oh, I'm with the upper echelon of Bend, Oregon. They know me. I know them. I make their pizzas. They use my art. You know, we were one of them. That translates directly to my 44-year-oldness. Who cares who's the best? The idea that I can make a living with my friends, that is the biggest privilege.
Yeah. So do you have the same process when you're doing a food cart logo as like doing a Nike logo? Same kind of thing?
Well, I mean, the thing with Nike is you have beautiful decks and presentations, and you have emails about emails, and you have layers upon layers of communication and starts and stops and things and shit and stuff. And it's just called being professional.
Yeah.
But there's something refreshing about just having your buddy over and sketching literally on the paper that you had the sandwich in, sketching together. And like now I have the sketch done. I just have to go build that thing, and I'll show him some stuff tomorrow, and he'll keep moving. Yep. And it can be that way and that immediate. That is the magic of graphic design to me, or art, or just creating things, let's say, and having control of it, you know? So to answer that, less and less am I doing the big shit. Less and less. It's just, I did just enough to be really proud of it. But when you see it in the book and I say logos that made me lots of money and logos that didn't make me a cent, both mean a lot to me. You know, this was never a pursuit to be the best or to make the most money. It was different. It was a pursuit to get away with a creative life and then have to pay your bills. But when I started to get ahead, that changed. It was like, I'm not saying no to nothing, because this supports a lot of people around me. Mom and Lee and my sister and my other sister and my dad too. I got kind of retired by mom and dad. Before my dad passed, I had them covered. I'd go home and they'd be like, we need carpet. I'd get it. One time I got him a big fucking TV. I'm watching him watch his Tiger games, you know. In the summer, I'm working at their dining room table. You saw that dining room table. Yeah. I'm at the dining room table working in my boxer shorts. Dad's in his boxer shorts watching his Tiger game, yelling at the TV. And I'm watching him have to lean forward to get a little closer to see some of the shit. Fuck this. I get in the van. It's about 2008. I get in my van. I drive into Traverse City. I go to the Best Buy, and I buy him some 50-inch something or whatever the fuck. $1,500, 52-inch, whatever the hell. Sony. And I drive it back out there. And I walk in the door with this big, my big grand entrance. You know, you can't even get it in the door by yourself. It's like so big. So I got to prop the door. And he's like, what are you doing? You're letting bugs in. And I walk in with this big TV and I put it down. And he goes, you didn't get me the 60-inch? And he goes, oh, Aaron, what you doing? He goes, well, where's the DVR? You know, whatever. Yeah. You didn't get me one of those, you know, the digital clock. You know, I can't even set a digital clock. All the shit from my dad. And then we set that fucker up. And I went and bought my dad a big honking TV to watch his Tiger games. And my mom got home that afternoon from whatever she was doing. She was just like, oh my God, it's so big. I did a lot of that shit. Like, what a privilege to just be able to, you know, there were years there that my dad would do the kind of the same for me. And what it would be is I'd be coming back from the West, and I'd be leaving to go another year at West, and my dad would pull me aside and he'd go, hey, don't tell your mom, but here's $100. Do something with this out West. You know, this will cover your first month of rent. Yeah. You know, it's gas all the way out West. When I had nothing. And I started to do that with him. I'd go home and like, you know, now my mom, I kind of cut her a check. When she needs something, I just have her covered. You know, that is my battle. You know, my sister just got a really good job, Sarah. She is in you know, the audiology industry, and she's got this really good like sort of, you know, sales and teaching and you know, she has a team and shit. But you know, she's traveling a lot, hustling and stuff. And I've got, if she needs something, I've got her covered too. If she needed something, you know, and right down the line, if it's any buddies or whatever, I only need so much. Lee makes fun of me because she'll say, "Well, Aaron bought a shirt last year." Yes, he did. He bought a new shirt. And this thing's 3 years old. It's like,
you got like 200 T-shirts upstairs.
Well, that's a little different, you know. But I don't need, you know what I mean? I don't need 10 pairs of jeans. I have one pair of jeans. I have a couple shirts. I have 7 or 8 T-shirts, and that's just all really, you know, what, 20 pairs of socks, 10 pairs of underoos. Fuck it. Like if your life, like it goes all the way back to a quote when I was a kid. I met this guy, you know, who would pine about this, you know, I don't know, if it was Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance or something, or, you know, he always quips, he'd say things like, the most free I've ever been was when I could fit everything into one backpack. I always think about that, you know, with all this gear I've got here. But, you know, I know there's a lot of shit, but, you know, the idea is like, if I get it refined and I have it in the right, you know, receptacles, you won't really feel that. You'll just feel density, you know, because, you know, the idea is you keep shit clean, but not right now, you know. You go to other places and they don't even know how to store this stuff. You know, Robbie and I are working on all this plywood here. This is like $2,500 worth of the good plywood, Baltic birch. And man, can't even reach those fuckers at the 10-foot height. It's so cool. Yeah. Anyway, how are we doing on this thing?
We're doing pretty good. Okay. I got just a couple more questions for you. Okay. So what kind of lessons did you take from the golf courses, from your trips out west that you still use to this day? What kind of stuff did you learn as a snowboarder that you use working for Ford or Obama or anything? Or did you take some of those lessons with you? What did you do back then that you still do now?
Well, I think just a little bit, you know, I think I just kind of addressed specifically about like, you don't have to be the best. You can just have 6 guys in a Subaru. It's a collective quality that's better than just one guy getting it all, you know? And I don't know how that really, let's see here. So I struggle with a question like that because it's like when I'm in the big leagues and I'm working for Target or something and I'm on the phone with someone and the girl says, so can we set up a meeting for next week to talk about the changes we need to make? It's like, we have to set up a meeting a week from now to just talk about the changes I'll make from today. Like if you just tell me right now on the phone, I'll do that right now. We don't even have to have a meeting next week. You'll get a PDF in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? That immediacy. Is that from snowboarding? It's from working with your buddies, you know? Yeah. And that came through snowboarding. To go back a little bit farther, independence. Listen, in my maturity or my just sort of lack of enthusiasm with sideways shit, I don't give a fuck if the guy's riding a, you know, 2x4 snowboard, or dare I even say a set of skis down that hill. As long as they're outside ripping it up, it's pretty cool, you know, fine. But I'll always have a chip on my shoulder for skiing because it was like, they were like rich guys. They were like good looking guys and guys like named like Biff and shit, you know, good looking, winning medals, speed suits, rich kids. Yeah. We saw that delineation. It was very clear. And we were scumbag skateboarders who just were doing it out in the hill. We bought our own gear. We helped invent it. You know, we helped, you know, whatever. But it was us. And it was, you went to the hill. And I remember a ski patrol guy behind me. I'm in line with all my buddies. And he wants me to move so he can get to the front of the line. And he took his pole and he fucking stabbed me in the back of my, up above the sorrel. And I was like, fuck, and he's like, move. And I just was like, you're a ski patrol, And there was a pioneer quality to like, woo, look at you guys banging gates. God, how fucking bony is that? We're just out here ripping it up. We're looking at stuff in different ways. And guess who followed along? Well, the rollerbladers of snow did. Free skiing. Fine. And they showed up and all their poles and Bob Marley and Goofy Riff Raff and names like, I don't know, Hunter and names like Pine Cone and whatever the fuck else, whatever. Well, it's all part and parcel, I mean, there's a spirit there of like just kind of making your own way. That came from snowboarding. That came from being chastised up on the hill and being physically messed with, like called a faggot or something from what? Some skier guy? Like who uses that word in 1990? I knew better to use that word in 1990, but that fuck didn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was like, man, guess what skateboarding and snowboarding taught me? I have gay friends and they're cool and they hang with all the beautiful girls. And they listen to better bands than you macho jock. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so thankful that punk rock showed me that you can love any which way. Mm-hmm. And that my mom and dad did too, Yeah. And here's what I'll say is I have buddies from that scene that didn't feel that way. And now they're these Trump guys and shit. That is heartbreaking to me because their pedigree is really cool. Their pedigree, is bands like Tad. Their pedigree is Mudhoney. And cool people doing cool shit. You know what I mean? Grunge or whatever, Bad Religion, Thinking, they're like, they're like bands and stuff.
They kind of turned off the switch.
No, they're just angry fucks who hate paying taxes. Hey, I pay a mountain of taxes, but I hope that, I hope it goes to helping regular people who need a little bit of help because you know what? People need help. Yeah. They've been fucked with for generations and we've had it really good and you're going to have to help them. So Sweden does it that way. We'll get our shit together. Yeah. Right now, this Trump shit, it's the last dying breath of dumb assery. It's the last dying breath of we're better than the Browns or whatever. They're holding on to the last. So the GOP assholes are dropping like flies because it's coming out what turds they are. It's the last gasp. And you know what's going to be awesome in America? We're going to become Sweden. When I went to Sweden, man, the guy was like, how many homeless people you have in America? And I was like, oh my God, it's in the millions or something, whatever it was.
More in Portland than in all of Sweden.
Well, right. He's looked at me and he goes, there's 43 people documented homeless in Sweden. Some have some illnesses, some have this. Think about that when you come here. I just was blown away. I've been very lucky. I've worked hard. But I also had some shit carry me. So this doesn't go on your podcast or whatever. You can leave it in. No one will ever see how much I donate to helping people even in Portland or back in Detroit. I donate a chunk. And I'd rather donate it there than give it to Uncle Sam. What a blessing. How fucking lucky is that? I never ever had any of that shit. But, people have been messed with all of our lives and we'll never really feel it. Here's the deal. In America, me and you walk in to get a job interview, our chances are better just because we're white guys. My buddy who goes in is a black guy, his chances are already, that's not good. That shit's all changing. It's all equalizing. And it oughta. Because America isn't just the land of, you probably should leave this shit out of here.
I mean, there should be equity of opportunity, but obviously you prove that there's not going to be an equity of outcome. You're going to
have to let me listen to this because that is the truth. And it's like, it really pisses me off that like aunts and uncles are like, fuck it, that's just how it is. No, it has to change, with inequity,
But you've also worked yourself to the bone to not have the same outcome.
You're going to have to let me listen to this and give it a quick little edit. Because if something sounds a little too syrupy, you got to take it out.
Yeah. No, I mean, but here's the thing. It's like you've got opinions and it's like you fought for what you've achieved. No one gave this stuff to you, right? You took it one baby step at a time.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, last question. There's a lot of kids who look up to you. They want to be designers. They want to be
Can you provide me a list?
Yeah, there's my daughter Sasha for one. Right?
Oh man, I used to hold her and burp her and stuff.
She
She's
wants
so
to be a
cute.
designer, but it's like, how do you
remember my
like give
dad?
any advice for people who don't want to just be designers? You can go to school and get a degree and learn the programs. How do you become someone who stands above regular designers and become a great designer? What kind of tips would you have for that?
Oh, I think just over-exceeding, understanding the privilege, in it, that you are lucky to do this stuff. There's no complaining in graphic design. The very worst day of graphic design, bunch of changes from the client, will never, ever add up to the very best day at your pizza job. It just won't. It just won't. You have to keep that perspective at all times, because I see a lot of we don't know how we have. I see a lot of we don't know how good we have it itis. Mm-hmm. And they're bitching about long hours and stuff, and it's like, hey, fucker, you're inside. You're inside. That guy out there doing the pylons, he's outside. It's 106 in August here in Portland.
Yeah.
You're organically fed. You're paid well. You're working on killer stuff. You're wearing nice clothes. You're inside. And you're going to bitch you have to work late? Shut up. I don't get in anyone's face, but I hear that stuff. And after a night of listening to me talk about all the garbage I've been talking to you guys about, you'll hear guys come up to me and say, wow, man, I'm going to change my perspective a little bit. And it's like, hey, man, I had it too, but it scared me that I was finding myself, getting exhausted over having to click a mouse? No. Digging ditches, that shit's exhausting. There's ways to stop yourself and get a little bit of perspective and go, God damn, things are good. So I would say having perspective in graphic design will make you compassionate. It will make you be nicer to the people in the back who are actually printing your shit or helping you with your flights or whatever, Always say thank you. These are all just golden rule kinds of bullshits. All the stuff about how to make a good logo and how to be a good person, whatever. It's going to take elbow grease. I don't care if you're the best of the best or the worst of the worst, whatever. You just got to put the elbow grease in, and I do it, And sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes it's rough. But, yeah, I don't know. The idea is also just having the perspective to be like, who cares who's best, Just be a good, solid human. Be a good, solid worker. Be a good, solid mate. Be a good, solid son or daughter or whatever. A good citizen. Whatever. There's all these. I was just on the podcast last week where they're talking about, there's like these studies where an actor falls, and then they just kind of someone's counting. Wow, 13 people walked past him, too busy to stop and help this person up. Because he's a male or something, Okay, a little old lady falls. Took 3 people to get to her. If you're the kind of person that hesitates, that's just being a bad human being. You know what I mean? You look at that and just kind of go, fuck it. I got my own life and my own set of worries, and that's just really weird. I really strive to be that person that's gonna go stop and jump and go help anyone. You know what? I'm gonna go real high and say 90 out of 100 will. But it's amazing to me there's, you know who they are? They're web developers. That's who it is. Web developers. They'll just stab you right in the face. Just kidding.
Fuck web developers.
To all the web developers listening, a little joke. I got in trouble at this UX conference. UX, UI shit, whatever, design. And I go to this thing, and it's a bit of a tough crowd. I get up there, and I'm this, water buffalo. Oh, let's talk about logos. Let's talk about wiener dogs and all the other garbage I talk about. And I get up there and I go, God, tough crowd. I go, let me get a couple of jokes to break the ice. Here's the first joke. Before I get to the jokes, what's the old adage? If you can't be a graphic designer, there's always UX, UI. And the whole place, but one kid tweeted it.
Really?
Without any smiley faces or without any little har-hars or without any of that fuckers up here.
So was he trying to throw salt on you, or was he enjoying it?
He was a buddy. He was enjoying it. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe you said this, that animal, whatever. But then you start getting these replies. There's no context, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And all these animals. Oh, how America's being divided right now. And now you're going to divide the creatives. It's like, wait, before you make me a monster, understand I was just being a dick. If I was in a room of skiers, I would have said, what's the old thing? If you can't be a snowboarder, there's always skiing. It's one of my dad's jokes.
Yeah.
It's like my dad at the understanding.
You don't take yourself too seriously.
Ever. What my dad you're at the barbecue. And the war heroes there, that type. You know what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Like he's got the egg yolks or whatever, the little things on his hat, and he says something like USS Virginia. And this is 1984, and Hank here fought in the big one.
Yeah.
Whatever. Hank fought in Vietnam. Hank fought in Korea, whatever it was, only 30 years before, 20 years before, 10 years before. 1984, I'm 11 years old, and my dad, sitting there, my dad kind of looks at Hank. He goes, Hank, whose side did you even fight for? And here's this guy regaling. Oh, then we did this. We dropped this. We did this. Oh, we shot this up. My dad goes, did you even fight for our side, Hank? The guy's like, how dare you, my dad? Just kidding. It's like, my dad, the ability to make something, the levity is an art form. Okay.
Your dad was an artist.
Oh,
of
fuck.
life.
He was a bullshit artist. Animal.
He had a good time.
Well, here's another one. The idea is this, and it's no different in graphic design. The idea that, we'd go to the barbecue, and there was two kinds of newborn parents. There was the parents that are parading the kids around, and then there's the parents that are just, they're so relieved, and you can just kind of tell they're just a little bit like, here's the baby. And there's the people that are kind of like, well, then we got this, we got that. They're like kind of like bragging, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what my dad would, he just knew how to bring someone either up a peg and really say, she's beautiful. You need to really go and show this little baby, whatever. He knew how to do that. But also, if someone's going a little, my dad would kind of go, Hank, medical, with the advances in medicine these days, are you even the father? This kind of shit. Did you guys ever find out who the father was? Like, that's my dad's little way of like just kind of righting the ship,
right,
and just bringing things up. Now, I think you can do that with the arts or graphic design or even snowboarding. The idea that like,
unless you're a UX developer, apparently.
Well, here's society's worst. You ready? Horse thieves in the West, door-to-door encyclopedia salesmen, DMV employees, web developers, UX coders, Trump support. I'm lying. I'm just being a dick. Skiers. Oh no.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like whatever. It's fun.
I'm
it's all
being a
fun.
Dick. Graphic
it's
designers, assholes who haven't even. You know what I did yesterday? I stepped on a skateboard. I'm 900 pounds, and I went down my thing into the street, and I went and did a couple blocks on my skateboard, terrified. Because Mark, when was the last time you twisted your ankle?
What's it like riding a longboard?
That's not funny. You'll never catch me on one of those. You'll never. Although I do have these big gnarly 70 durometer crypto wheel deals because they're so soft, but I haven't had that feeling of like when was the last time you twisted your ankle?
Oh, I do all the time because I have bad ankles now.
Okay,
right?
well, a lot of fun. This is how it goes. The last 5 years, it's been once a year. I'm pounding around in some airport with my bags, and there's a crack in the Heathrow, whatever, and I fucking went down. And that is some humbling shit. Yeah. And my mom will say these kind of like folky, like, you got to watch every step, bud. You're not 20 anymore. So the idea of like how to fall on a skateboard, how to fall, a punk rocker, the ability to jump off some stage and how to fall and land on people and stuff. Well, we used to have that in us, and you just knew how to do it. And it's not that I necessarily want to lose that, but I haven't really used those senses. To be on that skateboard yesterday, I was terrified. But I'm gonna go do it.
How'd it
go? It went okay. Lee was like, "You look confident on it." I mean, I got to shed about 600 pounds, but it's like, Jesus,
That's a decision you're going to make for yourself.
Well, I used to just run and jump on that thing like I wasn't even thinking.
Yeah.
Going through and when I was making the book, I forgot about something. One summer, I guess I'd say about 1990, I had a Jason Lee World Industries deck. And I had, whatever the deck was before, some Santa Cruz, Jeff Grosso or something, whatever I had moved on from her. I would take that deck with all the gear off it, and there was a crack in our sidewalk at the end of our little sidewalk. And I would stick the tail in the crack, so that thing is sticking up 28 or 29 or 30 inches or whatever it is, 28 inches. I mean, what's a deck,
30,
And
about 30.
Okay.
29.
I could ollie that thing.
Really?
I could ollie that thing at the height of my skateboardery. Now, whatever. I'd slappy a curb all night behind my pizza place. But, I don't need to ever get to those glory days. Same with snowboarding. We hit jumps, we bailed, we rode POW, we did all the jump. I don't need to go back to that. but I do miss it. I miss the outdoors.
Well,
I
powder's
miss.
still fun, you know.
Oh God! Some of the tales I've heard of the Alaskas and stuff. Some of the photos I've seen.
Yeah.
I never quite got to do that, but I also knew that was some big shit. Like every time I see Travis Rice, I'm always like, man.
The thing is, though, they show
careful,
you like
buddy.
the gnarly, and like 70% of it's intermediate, and it's just perfect powder. It's like you're not challenging yourself with like gnarly conditions. You're challenging yourself with perfect conditions.
A couple years ago, Jared Eberhard wrote me and said, "We just went to Baldface. Holy shit, Draplin, you gotta go. It was so fun." And I just, I can get some, Evan, help me with a pair of whatever, let me get. I gave all my gear away to guys who were actually going and doing it. My buddies who are, working people who work hard and bought their gear every year, I gave all my free orders and shit away because that was for them.
Well, maybe we can go snowboarding again one day, Draplin.
Coming out of retirement this year.
That's
Talk to
about time.
Blotto. You guys need anyone on the team? Talk to Rose. You guys need anyone on the team? Any big demographics? I just, I'm coming out of retirement. It's going to be my big shot. Isn't there a market for 44-year-old, water buffaloes who snowboard? There probably is.
There probably is. And you know what? They still probably ride powder.
Oh, my God. I mean, I talk to Vin. I'll say, Vin, look at us. We got to go ride. You want to go ride? And he's like, oh, man. First of all, you're going to go ride. It's going to hurt. You got to get your feet back.
Yeah.
Every
you
year,
got to take some laps just to warm up.
Just a week. And every year, in Bachelor, I don't care at the height of our physicality, it took you 3 or 4 or 5 days just to be able to not have your shit burn on the get backs.
Yeah.
It took. You had to get injured and heal, and then you're back in it. And by a week later, 2 weeks later, you don't even notice it. I missed that. Yeah. I missed that physicality of just zip zapping around. So I will say, I have a buddy in Portland. His name is Kevin Porterfield, and Porterfield wasn't a pro. Porterfield wasn't a this, wasn't a that. He was just an awesome buddy. He was a buddy. He always had great spirit. Porterfield's out doing it. I'm seeing these photos of him slashing big pow glades and bullshits and hiking and with his daughters. He's out doing it at 45 years old, and it's cool, man. And I kind of like, oh, man, here I live in beautiful Oregon, and it's just basically indoor living, indoor living. But, man, I kind of want to go and maybe this year go take a couple turns.
Yeah.
Get me some snow pants and moon boots and get up there and rip that shit up.
You should.
I'd definitely be riding for Union Binding Company, if you know what I'm saying.
Right on. Well, thanks for your time today, Draplin. This has been a fun little
collection,
conversation. Huh? Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah. I'm enjoying myself seeing the natural progression and all the hard work. It seems like it's been paying off for you.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. Anyone I disparage in this, be it TJ Lise or Don Trump, well, you make your bed, you lie in it too. So anyway, there's some snowboarding for you. All right.
Oh, boy.
Thanks,
okay,
man.
cool.
See ya.
On behalf of Mark Sullivan and the Beeve, thanks for listening to the Snowboard Project. Remember, ride fast, take chances, dream big, and take action. And for God's sake, don't be a... Don't forget to support advertising-free snowboarding media at patreon.com. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.